Everybody. How's everybody been?
Hey,
Oh, everybody's okay? All right. I see by the thumbs up, everybody's been okay. All right. I'm asking everyone to mute themselves, and I want to welcome any new um, people that are visiting us for the first time today or new to Necessary Trouble. If you've tuned in today, we want to ask you, we want to thank you for tuning in, and then we want to ask you to put your name and contact information in the chat. Um, and we will make sure that you get a proper welcome. Okay. So at this point, I would like to, we're going to get the meeting started. And I want to ask Becky if she will review the agenda for us. Becky.
Absolutely. Let me share my screen. And let me say a little bit about the context, which is we have been recently starting with saying a little bit about the context of the meeting and then also about the agenda. And let me start by acknowledging that something that Dr. Durley was talking about before we began, which is, let me say something about 9/11. I want to just pause and really acknowledge the what happened 21 years ago today. I want to say something about just to acknowledge the loss of life on that day, the loss of loved ones, the deaths of first responders, the physical and psychological trauma that really in many ways persists today for lots and lots of people. And also wanted to say how sorrowful and odd and ironic to be that today in 2022, it seems very clear that the greatest threats to our democracy are from within. And that there have always been fissures and fault lines in our democracy, which Black and Brown people have been painfully aware of from the beginning. And we were saying that it had looked really like we were going in the right direction there for a while in terms of healing and bolstering and supporting democratic principles, and that this is a moment of peril for those principles. And so it makes our work here today and our work in 2022 all the more crucial and urgent. So let me say something about where we are in terms of 2022 and election dates. August 22nd was the first day that people could apply for absentee ballots. So a reminder that anybody who can vote early in person is encouraged to vote early in person. But for people who really must vote absentee, they can, as of August 22nd, they can apply for absentee ballots. Those ballots will be mailed out starting October 10th. And October 11th is the last day to register to vote in order to vote in the general election. And so our the team that Janet Grant has been heading up between Necessary Trouble and the DeKalb Dems have been hard at work. October 17th, early in-person voting begins, and November 8th, general election, which is 58 days away. In case anybody is not feeling the heat, it is 58 days away, which is a minute and a half, and a reminder that we are talking this year about razor-thin margins, so every single voter we touch is crucial. Which leads us to the agenda for today. We were fortunate enough to be hearing a little bit from Reverend Dr. Gerald Durley. PJ Lemuel will be introducing him, but I just want to say how extraordinarily fortunate we are to have him with us today as a very embodiment of working, giving it everything to bolster democracy. We're then going to be talking a little bit about fundraisers that we now have planned for our Troubler candidates. And then we're going to be doing some updates about the Troubler work underway and some recruitment, hoping that everybody can find a place to plug in. And on that note, I'm going to turn this back to PJ to introduce our speaker.
Good afternoon, troublers. Good afternoon, new people. Good afternoon, everybody. Originally, my assignment was to contact Bishop Reginald Jackson to speak about a grassroots initiative called Faith Works, representing over 1,000 Black congregations in Georgia, creating a voting rights organization which will focus on voter turnout and education in response to Senate Bill 202, the state's voting laws. Faith leaders rising together because our democracy has come under attack. In pursuing my mission, I attended a meeting for FaithWorks and heard Dr. Durley speak, and that was it. When I got in touch with Dr. Durley and he agreed to come as our guest speaker for our September meeting, I asked him, was there anything that he would like for me to share about his life? He said, just take whatever you need from what's been written. And I thought to myself, humility 101. How do you introduce Reverend Dr. Gerald Durley in 6 sentences or less? It's impossible. But what I'm going to try to do is give it a try with 6 paragraphs, okay? 80 years ago, he was born in Wichita, Kansas, grew up in California, graduated from high school in Denver, Colorado, recruited to play basketball for Tennessee State, earned his degree in psychology. He was student leader in the civil rights movement. He went to Nigeria with the Peace Corps, went to Switzerland, played some basketball for a national Swiss team, and then returned to America to witness the decaying of our society's moral, social, cultural, and family value systems. He enrolled at Howard University and earned his master's in divinity. He pastored Providence Missionary Baptist Church for 25 years. He retired and is currently the pastor emeritus. On August the 23rd, 2022, I met this giant of a man that I had been reading and watching YouTubes about, whose life has inspired and enlightened men and women across religious, ethnic, racial, and general differences. Someone wrote about him that he was gregarious, engaging, and had a caring personality, which was forged in the midst of the civil rights movement upon the pulpit of social justice. I met all of these adjectives on that day. I was truly overcome by his charisma and the force of personality. Congressman John Lewis spoke about Dr. Durley's proof of work, that it demonstrates the fact that all lives can be amazing when we're willing to lift up others and give back. Dr. Durley has worked tirelessly with climate change issues and is a wealth of knowledge on the subject. In 2 days, September the 13th, 2022, he has been invited by President Biden to Washington, D.C. to an event in the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act. Ladies and gentlemen, I present our guest speaker for today, Reverend Dr. Gerald Durley, Pastor Emeritus, Providence Missionary Baptist Church, Interfaith Power and Light Board Chair. Hello, Dr. Durley. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Ooh. Thank you for that very gracious introduction. I'm so glad you read it just the way I wrote it. Now I feel a lot better But this is certainly a mixed day. As she said, I'm Gerald Durley, and I'm so thankful that Necessary Trouble would think enough of me to allow me to share for a few moments about something that's so near and dear to all of us, the challenges that we face in trying to reestablish democratic principles and some democracy in a nation. I love when I first met PJ Lemuel, I said, well, what is this? And who are these people? And I found a kinship. I found people that have stayed in this struggle for some years. It's not easy to continue to talk about voting and voting practices and principles when you're under constant assault at all levels in the nation. And so I'm so pleased to be among those that have stayed in the struggle. There's a song that we sing in the church called I'm on the Battlefield. But I've got to say about Necessary Trouble and what I've learned about you in recent weeks, that you're not on the battlefield, you are in the battle. Right. There's a difference between being on the battlefield and in the battle. I've known people on the battle, but they don't have a scratch on them. They've never had a problem. But when you're in the battle, you're going to face the opposition at all times, and it's going to continuously to reassert itself. So thank you for staying in the battle and not merely on the battlefield. Today, 21 years ago, America, as Becky was saying, and we talked earlier, was under assault from the outside. Many of us got up that morning and we thought we were watching a cartoon when the buildings were falling and the planes were going in. We really didn't know what was going on, and we were being attacked from the outside. We saw the pain, we felt the pain for days. We saw all of the consternation that was going on. And then we began to realize it was real. And one of the things that it did in the midst of all of the tragedy, it began to bring us together, and we began to look beyond the differences that we had in terms of racial, in terms of class. And for a few moments, for a brief period of time, we were all feeling the pain and the anguish of the people. We had been accosted and attacked from the outside. Now, 2022, we're being attacked, but not necessarily from the outside, but from the inside, from the very principles that made this nation great. Principles that said that everybody has a right to vote. It is a human right. It is a constitutional right. But now, as we go into this elections period, we find two things beginning to reemerge and resurface themselves that I saw in 1960. When John Lewis and I started in the movement in Nashville in 1960, we didn't really know all that what we were doing. We knew that something was not right. We knew that there were injustices, inequities, and inequalities. And we got in there and we stayed. And two things made us strong during the civil rights movement. I think those two paramount features must exist today. I always ask people, what are you willing to sacrifice and what are you willing to risk? If you're not willing to sacrifice nor risk, then you need to wait on the sideline until we come back. But we were willing to sacrifice and risk. And once again, being attacked from the inside, when we look at here in Georgia, when we look at SB 202 for voter suppression laws are beginning to take hold. And what fuels that, I had to ask, why would people disenfranchise large groups of people through redistricting of lines and putting codes in and taking people off the voter rolls? And I had to come away with, certainly not absolute, but ignorance and fear. I didn't say stupidity, but ignorance. Ignorance means lack of knowledge, lack of understanding, not realizing that when all people have access to voting, that the economy is better, that the laws are more affluent and better for people. So, but ignorance of saying we don't want this and we don't want to lose control, and a privileged mentality, almost through that institutional racist ideology between not only race, but gender and sexual preferences, and sometimes even when it comes to women. So that fear has raised its ugly head predicated upon ignorance. So it's so necessary, I didn't mean to put that in, and necessary to get into the trouble, to break down the ignorance by eradicating the fear, to understand that when we work together, we can make a difference. When we look at SB 202, when I looked at some of the things, I could not believe it. We thought in 1964, 65, that we had already gone over that hurdle where people would have access to voting and they could come And if they could get registered, and we'd make it easily accessible by taking people Sunday voting and other kinds of activities that we put in place. But we found out that now many of those tactics have been revoked. I could not believe that actually it's against the law now if a senior citizen was sitting in line that you could not give them a bottle of water, that there was certain what they call poll watchers that could come up and you might have been standing in line for 2 hours and they can challenge you and take you out of line and you would lose your spot, thereby discouraging people from voting. But I'm so pleased that there are people such on this call and those who are calling in and those who will be fighting for the next 58 days that would take the same kind of strength that when we found when we went to South Africa to vote for Nelson Mandela, people standing in lines for hours under the sun who had never voted, and all they could vote with was their ex. Everybody on this today, you have an ex. What are you going to do with your ex? And so we look at how do we come together and why is it necessary? It's necessary primarily because of health conditions, educational conditions, the conditions that are negatively disproportionately impacting people of color, and now even women, what women are going through, and what they've been, once again, being subjugated to the rule of certain kinds of men that want to take them back to some time in the past. And I try to stay as bipartisan as possible when it comes to voting, because everybody has a right to choose whom they wish to do. But in this particular case, we came together to put together Faith Works. We said we'd get 1,000 congregations to come together to educate, educate, to strategize, and to mobilize, to register, to get involved, the same work that you're doing. But I said at that first meeting that we cannot do it alone anymore, not just in the Christian faith. We've got to be interfaith efforts. We've got to be with the Muslims and the Jews and the Shiites and the Buddhists and others, and along with the more progressive businesses that are involved and the civil and human rights groups. So we put together a large congregate of individuals that are going to be doing what it is that you're doing now. We're just encouraging all of them to, first of all, educate people what's going on. I was so pleased to see what Becky and what on the screen, the dates that the voting will take place, early voting, absentee ballots. One of the things that we're talking about is to go on the page for my voter page, to find out, are you registered? Have they changed your district? Is your location still the same? These are the kinds of issues that people don't know. They've cut back when they have only put one absentee ballot box, I believe, in one county. Now they're putting ballot boxes in places where you vote. So when they close at 7, you can't get in. These are all oppressive kinds of, and oppressive and suppressive. But I'm so glad that we come from good stock. Those on this call, we will not bend, we will not bow, we will not break, we will not back up. We understand that if it's not us, then who is it? Democracy will not be challenged over, and it's always going to be challenged. But the strength and the viability comes from when we believe in what we're doing it. Here we are now, 58 days away, and it's time for us now to really get excited about what it is that we're doing. Therein lies that this is not a presidential, so we've got to look at midterm as important as we begin to line up who's going to vote. One of the things that I think is very critical in this midterm election that we've all got to be about, what we're saying, is that we've got to vote all the way down the ballot. So many times we concentrate on the senatorial and maybe the governors, but we've got to look down at the Department of Labor and education and all the way down through those initiatives. And if we can get it, the kinds of progressive thinking and open, transparent legislation at the state level, it will support those who we will be looking at the Senate level. So they need the kind of support between Georgia and how it works together. So I think that it's going to be critical that we look at the dates, the times, understand when you can get your absentee ballot, when is the last day to put it in, what are the times, where is your voting location? These are important. This is what Faith Works is about. It's going to be for the next 58 days, but more importantly, it is not just to end on November the 8th. We are now starting to work. We understand that our opposition and those that have maybe a different perspective on this political situation, They are already working in the year 2095. So we've got 2095. So we've got to get ready for 2024. So this is the foundation. So we're asking everybody to become aware, get involved. What are you willing to sacrifice? What are you willing to risk? It's going to take time. It's going to take effort. But the same way that that man was putting together Mount Rushmore, he got up there every day, banging away at Mount Rushmore. And people laughed and said, what are you doing? He said, I'm just banging away. I'm putting together faces. Granite got in his eyes, but he didn't quit. He didn't turn around. And now it's a treasure here in the country. So we've got to take the same kind of persistence and the same kind of determination if we're to make a difference. And one of the things that I've been very much concerned about that's moved to the top now, not only voting, but climate change. 10 years ago, I shifted over to climate change. And the reason I did it, I had no idea. I could have cared less whether a polar bear got to another glacier. I didn't understand about trees and deforestation coming down. I did not realize that the heat was continuing to rise. My job was to look at police brutality, the inequities in healthcare, the political nuances that were keeping me in a deprived position. But I began to talk to a young lady who came to Georgia, and I got excited when she talked to me about teenage pregnancy. And I talked with her about teenage pregnancy. And the next thing I knew, she said, I want to introduce you to my husband. He's interested in climate change. I said, oh, no, I don't need tree huggers in my life. But the lady's name was Jane Fonda. Jane and I got close. So she introduced me to Ted Turner. Ted and I began to talk. And the next thing I knew, I was talking about carbon dioxide in the air. And what is this thing called the gas house effect? And how is it negatively, disproportionately impacting those in rural areas and people of color? What is carbon dioxide and what does it actually do? And I began to look at it and study it more when I began to look at how asthma was negatively, disproportionately impacting urban areas. And then I began to see Cancer Row, Cancer Island down there in Louisiana, 85 miles where petrochemical companies was polluting the water. Then I looked at Flint and I began to look around and I said, wait a minute, this is a civil and a human rights issue. Everybody deserves the right for clean energy and clean water. Therefore, it paralleled right along with my life goals of civil and human rights issues. So I began to get really involved. Then there was a young man out of Chicago. I started talking to him in 2007. I said, you need to really put climate change at the top. He said, is that an electable kind of thing? And I said, man, we got to work on it. And so Barack Obama said, all right, I'll listen to you. And so he started listening. Next thing I knew, we started growing and bringing people. My concern, particularly in the African-American community, that was not a priority. The priority was not climate change and global warming. And in many communities, that's something in the year 2035, 2040. But the IPCC report says that we've got approximately 5 to 10 years to keep the 1.5 Celsius down at a level, keeping carbon dioxide. We see the results right now, what's going on in Jackson, Mississippi. We see, even though it's an infrastructure that broke, but this is a part of climate change. We see what's going on with the wildfires and the triple-digit temperatures. These are realities that are going on now. Therefore, those who are advocates, those who are concerned about democracy, those who are concerned about the welfare and the well-being of individuals must join forces now to look at three things. We've got to look at the business aspect. We've got to look at the legislative aspect. We've got to look at the health aspect. And when we can put all of those things together and realize, and I realize that business people are in business for one thing, to make money, to turn a profit on their investment. But we cannot put profits over people. People are still important. And now we're not only putting it over people, but we're putting it over the overall environment. So it's very critical now that we begin to see that this is a constitutional right. And therefore now with this new reconciliation, the Inflation Bill Act is coming on, it's got climate change for about 300-something billion. That was unheard of years ago, because now it has become prominent. We've got to now understand that if the economy is to grow, we've got to look at alternative energy sources, and wind and solar are right at the top. So we're educating young people. I just took a tour of 22 historically Black colleges and universities, talking to them about alternative majors that they can get into in terms of solar, in terms of wind and other things. But the most important thing is that for those of us on this call, for those who are willing to go into necessary trouble, we as a populace must change our lifestyles. See, it's one thing to talk about, it's one thing to force politicians, but politicians and business people only change when the masses say that it's time to change. Watch this, and this is a projection. I made up a word the other day. I thought it was kind of cute. I don't know if it hangs. I don't know if it'll pass the test, but everybody's talking about the pandemic and what the pandemic has done in terms of social distance, in terms of masks, in terms of washing your hands. But I believe the climademic is going to be much stronger than the pandemic, because the climademic, you cannot social distance in the climademic. When a fire starts, it goes through your entire city, or a flood. So we've got to do prevention by changing our lifestyles in terms of what we do. When I say that Las Vegas would probably close at 5 o'clock in the next 4 years unless we do something, one would say, oh, that's impossible. But Lake Mead is 100 feet deficit, 100 feet without the water there, and all the Colorado rivers and other rivers that are flowing into that area. Those are things that we can now begin to mitigate this climate change. So as we go into this voting season, we got to keep not only what we're doing in terms of elected officials who are sensitive to our overall needs, but also concerned about the environment. What good is it for me to elect a person to be the governor or the president or the secretary of state, and I'm dead because I can't breathe, or I'm dead because cancer and asthma has torn up my body, or I'm dead because now we've torn down enough trees? We got to look at deforestation and begin to take our trees and begin to put more green space in the economy. I've covered a lot in a short period of time, and I'm sorry for that, but you might have some questions, some answers, some comments, some suggestions. I'm open to learn, but I'm going to stay on it. I'm not going to change. I'm focused. I'm too old. This dog is too old to learn new tricks, but I will bark a little differently if you give me the input. Thank you so much, Necessary Trouble. Thank you, PJ, for allowing me to come and share.
Okay, we're not finished. Thank you so much, sir, but we're not finished, okay? I'm going to turn it over to Becky in just a second to do the question and answer for you. But Dr. Durley, if I had not used your words, I would have had one sentence to introduce you. That was when I met you on the 23rd of August, okay? So I wouldn't have had much. You do know that, right?
You wouldn't have had much? What do you mean? Yeah.
Anyway, sir, I'm sorry. We thank you. We thank you so very, very much.
Now I could go on and on, but I think it'll be better to kind of the dialogue. I tried to put the framework and the rubric of which we can operate to understand that we cannot separate voting, legislation, climate change. That's why this act is so important. It's all around legislation, and we're seeing that even in a very twisted kind of bipartisan effort. Climate change has moved to the top, so voting, we've got to really be in there as we make this live. When you put $736 billion on the table in a bipartisan fashion, it means it's gotten to the lines of General Motors and the energy companies. So you're right in the middle of this initiative.
Thank you so much, Becky. Would you start the question and answer for Dr. Durley?
Happy to do it. And let me ask folks, if you would put your questions in the chat, that would be fantastic. So if you would put your questions in the chat, that would be great. And Reverend Durley, while other folks might be putting their questions in the chat, here is a question that I would pose on behalf of many of us. You have been in this struggle for over 50 years. And your energy and enthusiasm is an inspiration. Can you share with us any wisdom about keeping that kind of hope so vital and so alive against many astonishing obstacles?
Thank you, Becky. I believe years ago, and most of you on the call know, there was a young man in, I think, 1984. He was going to run for president. And that was 1984. We're in 2022, and his theme was "Keep Hope Alive." He was saying, "Keep hope alive." So it meant hope must have been dying in 1984. Now it's 22 years, now many years later. That same hope comes from when you begin to look around and you say something and you believe something and you work with other people who believe in what it is that we're doing for the overall good of the people. Selfish people, it's very difficult for selfishness to keep hope alive. Hope can only begin to be generated when you understand that we are linking arms and working together. And I think that I get excited about the word enthusiasm. That's where excitement, but you look at the Greek derivative of the word enthusiasm, it means in theos, or in God. Like I said, my first 3 degrees were in psychology and all of that at University of Math, but then I had to go back to Howard and get one in divinity to combine not only the theological, the excitement about what it is that you're doing. And 2, I think when I look at the tragic situations all around the people I'm called to serve, the people I'm working with, I see one tragedy after another, whether it's in crime, whether it's in jobs, whether it's in health. And I have to be regenerated to say, I cannot give up, I cannot turn around. And then what happens when iron sharpens iron, as we say. So when one person says, I can make a difference, and another person says, I can make a difference, then we've got a movement to make a difference. And that movement is what keeps me alive and keeps me hopeful.
That is a beautiful response. Thank you so much. And we will all take that to heart. A question, several questions from Sandra Menes. Can you explain a little bit more specifically what FaithWorks is doing right now? How many churches are members?
Right now, FaithWorks was initially started. Bishop Reginald Jackson of the AME Church was 500 churches under him. Bishop Blackie had of the CME had about 300 under his, and others were around. Here in Atlanta, I was president of Concerned Black Clergy on 2 occasions, as I pastored Providence for 25 years, and then over at Hunter Street, West Hunter Street for during the interim period, and other places. And so we said, let's start with that group with the civil rights. So we had our goal was 1,000 churches, and they're joining. Then we said, let's expand it. So the other day when PJ and others came, we had not only rabbis, but we had imams and all, because every group has just like Necessary Trouble, you all have a very strong body of getting people out to vote and educating them. And then we wanted to be the catalyst. It's one thing about the catalyst doesn't want to be the star of the show. The catalyst simply brings, in chemistry, they say, you bring the 2 elements together, and it's a titration. You raise the delta or the heat sign, and they come together, and no one realized what the catalyst was. So we're the catalyst in all this, bringing the groups together to say, now, how can we get out what you're doing? And how can you get out what we're doing? And how can we go across the state? So now we have state captains, 6 different state captains around the state that are going. We're really concentrating in 58 counties, rural counties. One of the things that you learn to do, sometimes you've got to be self-sufficient. It's nothing against the major Democratic Party, but sometimes just putting a sign up in the front yard or putting it in the newspaper, it doesn't reach the people down here who are voting every day. So we're going into the rural areas and encouraging them to do what we used to do a long time ago. Have a fish fry, invite people over to the house. And then the thing about it, we have a C4 where we're raising the kinds of dollars, we're raising $1 to put, and we'll build kind of a filter. It'll go right back into the hands of the people so when Mrs. Jackson wants to have a thing, here's $300, $400, invite the people over. And then here over there in Augusta, in Savannah, in Macon, here in Atlanta. So that's what FaithWorks is doing. And we're getting as many people. And again, generating that enthusiasm, that excitement, along with the education, and vote the entire ballot.
Beautiful. And Dr. Durley, I think you might have just answered Lou Boose's question. The 58 counties, is that 58 counties in Georgia or nationally? Or Georgia.
Georgia. Now, what's interesting? No, we're concentrating right in Georgia. We're not. But what's happened now, all over in the last 4 or 5 weeks, people have been calling over. How are you all coming together and coordinating and breaking down these little silos that we're in? Last week, we had an opportunity to meet with a young lady who's been stationed here now with the New York Times. And we were very honest. And she said, this is something. So they put it in the New York Times. Then on yesterday, we met with a group called Politico. They've got she was from London. And she came and we talked to her and about what it is that we're doing. So it's spreading so they can take the kind of, and we're willing, we might have the kind of the model, and we're just sharing it as other states call. But right now we're concentrating in Georgia. We're not only looking at just the Senate race, but we're also looking at the governor's race. We're looking at the labor. We're looking at education, all the way down.
Wonderful. And another question: how are there ways that grassroots groups such as us can help your effort?
Oh yes, we have. I wish I had the. I will give all the information. Well, PJ has it, how to get in touch with Mr. Reverend Lee May, and he can send all of the information of how to get involved. And really importantly is who's ever written that or called in and asked, how can we assist you to do as much as you can do as well? With our information, we got kind of a protocol, and a lot of it is what you put on the screen earlier. When, where, what, how. We concentrate a lot on, before you go to vote, make sure that you have, what kind of ID do you need? Did they change your location? After redistricting, what does it mean? Where do you have to go? Go into my voter page, and we're putting we've got a kind of a set format that people can use.
Beautiful. And is there a way that we can find out people can find out what churches are participating? Like, we have somebody here from Athens. Is there a way to find out if there are churches
yes.
in Athens?
Again, she
Lee
would
Mays?
Lee May,
Okay.
he has that list.
Okay, beautiful.
Mhm.
And a question from Michael Beach: what are the top 3 actions we can take to fight disinformation that is continuing to reinforce the country's division?
I think, it's one thing I've learned in verbal gesturing and all. As I said to Senator Warnock, I said, Raphael, with all the things that they were saying about him, and people were putting Herschel Walker up on one side and Raphael on the other side. And it's I know it doesn't go along with the traditional way of voter education, but I don't believe in getting up there fighting fire. And I told him, do not demonize the demon or you'll become a demon. What you do when you're gonna fight, let all of the kinds of things that have been said by his opponent, let them go. Don't get into it. If there's a debate, then debate the issues. Don't tear a person down, because once you start tearing a person down, they get a sympathy vote. And they get the sympathy vote, that's what we don't want. So consequently, to get in there, to get all of the facts, to make sure you get as many people out to vote, understand what they're voting for, why they're voting. I find that most people are very good in knowing what they need in their families. And I found out a lot when I used to work with mothers who were doing a lot of things on welfare. They say, oh, the welfare moms, and they put that little story out about they don't care about the children. They care, but they need to know. And once they know, then they say, what do I need to do? So it's incumbent not to necessarily, I don't spend all my time trying to speak against the opposition. I speak from a positive point of view of what we need to do, because I cannot expend at this age, I'm over 50, I'm over 60, I'm over 70 now. So I cannot expend any more energy on fighting this, but I can spend energy in doing what I'm doing right now.
Beautiful. Steffi Isust has a question of understanding from Leader Abrams that one of the demographics that is crucial in this election is African-American men. And you had begun to speak to that a little bit before the meeting started. Do you want to continue that?
I've heard this, and I don't know how that got out. Now, I'm around a lot of African-American men and a lot of different things, and I've heard that come. I don't know how it got out. Those that I'm talking with, they're all in and behind and working with Leader Abrams and what she's doing. I don't know, but a lot of times you can put something out and people start believing that. And I took that and made it a positive. I've heard it, and I said, and I was at a group, I said, look, they're trying to define you, saying that you don't care. That's an insult. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to now prove them wrong? So took that, but I have not seen large blocks of men, and I was wondering why. Most of them are saying, first of all, we're going to vote for her because she's a Black woman, and we want her there. Now, regardless of her political ideologies, and then next, what she's talking about in terms of the tax reductions, in terms of everything else that she's really done. Smart as a whip, knows, we knew her in the legislature. So we know what she can do. So when I hear that, I'm wondering where it's coming from, and unless they have certain people out on doing polls, but polls don't vote.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, thank you. Tara Doyle asks, does your climate group make a connection between climate disaster and the environmentally destructive and ethically problematic factory farming where yeah, go ahead.
Oh, yes, no doubt about it. I don't think you can, in my estimation, it is all integrated, it is all interrelated. The farming area, the brownouts, the pesticides that we use into the food, the kinds of way that, for example, the other day I looked and I stopped using sugar, but I do like honey on certain things. Honey has quadrupled in price. To buy a little jar of honey might be $14 to $15. Why? Because in the climate, the beekeepers, 237 beekeepers went out of business last year because the climate was so bad that the bees could not exist in that. So therefore, that's interrelated to the agriculture part. That's just one aspect. Then when it comes to food deserts, where the flooding is taking place and the crops that are being destroyed because of either wildfires or because of flooding. So it's all interrelated. So we've got to get the overall carbon dioxide in the air and the pollutants in the air down. What's really frightening to me is that several years ago, Greenland was 100% ice. Now 70% of it now is green. When you go to Alaska, you see the glaciers melting. When you see the seas that are now, I think we just had another shark attack. We're blaming the sharks, but the sharks were tied into an ecological base, and now their sonar system is being reprogrammed because of the heat. But sharks were never predators of human beings because there was a certain balance in the overall ecology. And when we go back to the faith aspect, whether it's Muslim, Christian, Jewish, we all believe that there was a deity greater than all of this that put all of this together and was ecologically well balanced. And because of our greed, ignorance, whatever you might attribute it to, just wanted to live a certain way, we've destroyed that. So we've got to put it back into balance.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And before I turn this back over to PJ to wrap this piece up, Reverend Durley, any final words for us?
Yes. Do not become discouraged in well-doing. Many times I've seen things, and I'm no paragon. They say, oh, you're awfully strong. I said, no, I'm not strong. I'm resilient. So get resilience as a part of who you are, and to know that you're on the right track at the right time for the right reason with the right purpose, headed in the right direction. And if there's another thing, if everything is coming your way, you're in the wrong lane. So understand that what we want to do now is collectively come together with all the groups and stand up and assure that everybody has an equal right and an access to vote, know what they're voting for. And I think we can redeem, as Dr. King says, we can once again become the consciousness of America.
Well, as Karen Davenport said, amen to that. And let me turn this back to PJ.
Thank you, Becky. Dr. Durley, our time for today has come to an end. I want to, there really aren't any words that I can give you for the knowledge and everything that you've given us today. When we talked about you coming on, one thing that I asked you to do was give a word that will rouse the people. And you have done that sufficiently today. And with all of my heart and all the troublers, we thank you for taking out your busy time to talk to us.
Thank you so much,
and Dr. Durley.
And you know what? You opened up by saying you opened up by saying our time has come to an end. I think that's how you started. Guess what? Our time has come to a beginning.
Okay, I'll take it.
Yeah, this is the beginning because we got 58 days to be on this. So wherever we are, and PJ, would you kindly share the information of what was asked about people, how they can get involved? And then the number of churches involved. Lee can give you all that information.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Thank all of you. And tonight, before you go to bed, thank God, thank Allah, thank Jehovah Jireh, whoever you might be working, your great deity. Thank that, and pray for those that are still suffering from 9/11, 21 years ago. We've been blessed to be on here tonight and talk about what's going on. But this is a major thing, and I think it's very important for an overall nation to pray for each of its citizens. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you, sir. All right. I don't know about you guys. That's a hard act to follow. Okay. Now, okay. I'm still in awe. I'm still in awe. I'm still digesting stuff. Okay. Um, Now we will have Becky. Becky, we will have you to come on and tell us about the trouble, the work that the troublers are doing, an update. Becky.
Beautiful. PJ, thank you so much. And let me also just extend a huge gratitude to PJ for arranging for Reverend Durley to come and speak to us. That was just an extraordinary gift. And PJ, gratitude to you as well as to Reverend Durley for that. That feels like a privilege to have sat in on that for the last half hour. And so, if not us, who, right? So here we go. And let me say that the rest of this meeting is going to be a shameless effort at recruitment because 58 days to go and not a moment to lose and razor thin margins, and democracy depends on Georgia. So let me share my screen. So we had, just a reminder for anybody who missed the meeting in last month, is we had decided that Necessary Trouble would host 2 separate fundraisers. And one fundraiser is going to be for our House District candidates that we have adopted, Dr. Jasmine Clark and Dr. Kelly Kaufman. And we will host one combined fundraiser for the 2 of them. And we also agreed to host a fundraiser for Secretary of State Democratic candidate Bee Nguyen. And both of these would be about messaging as well as raising much needed funds. We have dates, which is the big news. And let me also just say we've had a really very strong team of folks who have offered to work on these. Much gratitude to the whole team, and I am speaking on their behalf. The soonest date is for our first fundraiser will be the fundraiser for Bee Nguyen, and that's going to be Sunday, October 2nd. We don't have an exact time yet, but it is early afternoon, and we will be letting you know as soon as we have time, a specific time. We will also have a graphic, we'll have donation links, we will have all of that for you as soon as possible. And then the other fundraiser is going to be on Sunday, October 9th from 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock. And that will be a combined fundraiser for Jasmine Clark and Kelly Kaufman. And similarly, as soon as we have graphics and links, we will send them to you. A note about the Jasmine and Kelly fundraiser, it will be the first half of our meeting, actually. We'll be inviting people, you know, that are non-troublers as well as troublers, but we will have a fundraiser from 4 to 5 on the 9th, and then we will have our regular business meeting from 5 to 6. So the biggest thing you can do right this millisecond is hold those dates. Here are ways to help make those a success and ways that you can help us. Most important, you can attend, you can donate, you can invite your in-state friends. We are also very much encouraging, especially for the Bee Nguyen fundraiser, to invite out-of-state friends. This is something, given the high-profile nature of Georgia, that we really believe that out-of-state folks, especially those in blue states, would be able to donate and or attend. And you can amplify the graphics on your social media. And so I can't say how much we are both looking forward to those fundraisers and really counting on your assistance. So fundraisers, in addition to fundraisers, there is a whole bunch of work going on, and we are going to start recruiting for even more help, because there are certain areas, especially where we really need some additional assistance. We have asked a number of volunteers to share the work they're doing. What's the work? Why they either like it or value it, why they believe it's important for democracy, and how you can pitch in to help. Let me just say that we are only presenting the work in areas that we are trying to recruit for. There is other work going on, and it's kind of covered for the time being, but every single thing that we're about to talk about, we need more help with. And so the areas that we're going to be talking about, we're going to be talking about canvassing, phone banking, postcarding, the Senior Citizen Voter Education Project, voter registration, poll workers, poll watchers, the county survey captains, and the voter protection hotline, where at all possible, we have actually asked not the leader necessarily of that work to be sharing, but volunteers to share their own experience. And again, we are so grateful to these folks for being willing to share their experience. And in every single area, I want to emphasize this is recruiting. So forgive me in advance for being a little shameless about it all, but we're just going to start moving through it. Michael Beach, would you say something about canvassing?
Sure. Thanks, Becky. And I think Reverend Durley talked so well about why we need to do something. I just retired at the end of 2021 from CDC after the pandemic. So I had this strong urge to try and do something politically. We need change. And so first of all, I'll put the plug in. Karen McCown is the head of this. She's great at recruiting. Contact her if you want to do this. If I haven't convinced you, then I'm feeling pretty passionate about things. I did the first canvassing with my wife for another candidate, and I wasn't sure it was for me. And I thought, I'll give it another try. And then I attended the Trebler meeting where we talked about who we were going to support and the candidates with Kelly and Jasmine Clark, and just thought, okay, I'm going to go again. And so, and we connected with Karen about how I'm going to do that and everything. And so I think what I needed, I didn't think it was for me, but after doing it for these candidates, when you kind of know more about them, I actually watched Jasmine Clark give some speeches in front of the House about several of these bills. She was very passionate. We've now met Kelly Kaufman last week when we were canvassing. She came out with us and spoke to us with her 7-year-old daughter. That I think what I'd like people to know is that this can make a difference. It's going door to door, knocking on doors. And if nobody's there, which there's a fair number, it's a lit drop and you put that. But there's enough people that answer that door that just are so grateful for what you're doing and what information you're bringing to them. And again, these turfs that Karen works with the campaigns to get are pulling people who have been regular voters. They're known to lean Democratic and that. So you're not having a lot of Republicans that are really kind of chastising you for knocking on their door. That these are people that just need reminders that this is the way to move forward. You have to vote, as we heard, voting down the ballot, that we tend to be really bad about voting all the way down. And we've seen how strategic things have been over the past several decades at taking over state houses. We have to support these folks. And so I think it's really important when you listen to these folks that answer the door. One of the women, 2 weeks ago said, I saw a Jasmine Clark sign and I went back and looked her up. This was one of us that put the sign up. I went and looked her up and I'm in. I wish I could volunteer, but I've got little kids and all that. But it's those sorts of things where you see that people are motivated. They just need somebody to say, one of the big things now is most of these 2 elections are dead heats. There's a chance to change things. And I know we've knocked on a lot of doors so far, and we've seen how tens of hundreds of votes can swing the election. And so this can make a difference. Karen is so fantastic. She makes it so easy. You'll get a long string of information about the candidates. You'll get your turf. You can load it into a mobile app, and you just kind of show up on Saturday. She's done everything for you. She hands you all your information and says, here's your turf with a map, go for it. And also you'll be teamed up in the beginning with somebody who's done it before, so you can get a little bit of practice. So you're not thrown out on your own. You're going to be with somebody. So I think Leslie and I were there last weekend, and Mary Lou and I did a turf this weekend. And so please sign up with McCarran. This is the time, and people don't quite realize how close some of these elections are. And that seems to be one of the primary motivators when I talk to people is, oh my gosh, my vote, again, as we've seen over and over, people keep forgetting how their single vote can make a difference here. And so just trying to see if there was anything else. And it doesn't take up huge amounts of time. We're showing up at 10 o'clock. I'm usually home by 1. And so this is kind of a morning, early afternoon sort of thing. You can still do all that other stuff you want to do in the afternoon. So please contact Karen. Thanks to her, because she's a gem on this and has made this so easy. That's all I have to say, except please come in. And the other is, I see many of the faces now since I'm new to the Troublers, that there's a really great group of people. So you'll have fun just meeting new people and that sort of thing. So thanks so much.
Michael, thank you so very much. Lots of you know Lynn Beach, and Michael is Lynn's husband, and we are happy, happy, happy to have him in the fold. And here's what I want to ask. I want to ask that if anybody is willing to do this and does not already get the Sign Up Genius that Karen McCowan sends out, if you would put your name with the word canvassing in the chat. So if you don't already get the Sign Up Genius Karen sends out, please put your name in the chat with the word canvassing. And here's a second request, because sometimes we get folks to volunteer and they get the form, they get the Sign Up Genius, and then they never come. So here's a second one. If you already get that, but you haven't been out canvassing yet this season, and you are intending to, and you are willing to, if you would put your name in the chat with canvassing, re-up. So just as a kind of an additional commitment, that would be fantastic. So great gratitude. And Michael, thank you for that phenomenal pitch. Next up, phone banking. Jane Hudson, would you talk a little bit about phone banking?
I will. Phone banking involves making telephone calls for our identified candidates, namely Kelly Kaufman and Jasmine Clark. And it's wonderful because you get to sit in the comfort of your home. You can have a cup of coffee, your tea. You can do it whenever it's convenient for you, because each campaign has a virtual phone banking link that they have established specifically for Necessary Trouble. So all you do is use the link to access the phone bank. There's a script that you follow with some drop downs where you indicate what kinds of responses you get from the voters. And it's easy, it's efficient, and it's definitely fun. I'm always amazed by some of the people I talk with. In fact, Michael, some of the people I spoke with this past week had already been contacted by canvassers. And one woman said, "You won't believe this, but Kelly Kaufman just left." And she said, "I didn't know who she was, didn't know anything about her, but now I'm a supporter and I'm going to vote for her." So when we get those people, and we're fortunate to get a number of them, then we talk about voting Democratic up and down the ballot. We talk about extending their efforts to include their friends and have their friends come up with plans to vote, etc. So I do think there's a way in which this can make a difference. There's a ripple effect, whether or not we realize it. And many, many, many of the people I talk to don't know that their district has changed, and they don't know who the Democrats are who are running. So it's really, really important work. One of the things I also love is in the script, each campaign is asking the voters what issues are especially important for them in November. And it's been just astonishing to have people at one end who can list multiple issues and other people who say, you know, I haven't even thought about it. So even putting that plug in and getting people thinking about what matters to them can only help get people to the polls in November or October. So if you're interested, I hope you will put your email in the chat, and I will be in touch by email with the links. I'll be happy to talk with you. Whatever you may need or want to help get you started, I am prepared to try to help out.
Beautiful. And Jane, am I right that we are now leaving phone messages, or will be leaving phone messages for both candidates?
We don't yet have the script for Jasmine's message, so we're only leaving messages right now for Kelly.
Okay, but hopefully we will have a script for Jasmine.
Yes.
Good,
Yeah,
because I think it's so much more satisfying also when, if you don't reach somebody, you can leave a message, and that will be the case for both candidates.
Yes.
And I say that because I really want to recruit people for this, and I want to lift up Leslie Mish. Leslie, may all blessings rain upon you, who just volunteered for phone banking.
Yay!
And let me say that Jane Hudson, with help from Ann Walter, has been doing all of this and has been doing 50 phone calls a day, and heroic. The number of calls she's made has been amazing, but she and they really need help. And so a reminder, Jennifer Smith, who has now become our kind of mentor in elections, was urging us to remind folks from her that what her data shows is that phone banking is actually as important and effective as person-to-person canvassing contacts. So these things that we are talking about, we've always assumed it was number 2, but according to some of the data shows that it's second to canvassing, and some data shows that it is as effective as canvassing. And either way, when you are connecting to another human being on the phone or in person, there is nothing more important than that. So if there's any way that you can spare a couple of hours, even a couple hours a week. Oh, Catherine Dragon, may all blessings rain upon you. Fantastic. If we can just get Leslie and Catherine, thank you so much. And if anybody else has a couple hours a week, they can pitch in for just a few weeks here. We can do this. So much gratitude, and huge gratitude for Jane Hudson for carrying just this, the vast majority of this. Thank you so much, Jane.
Thank you all.
Okay, Kate King, postcarding.
Okay, postcarding. It's probably not number 1 or number 2, but it might be number 3. It does make a difference. There's research that shows that people will look at a handwritten postcard where a slick mailer, they just toss it out, but something handwritten, especially with their name on it, they will stop and look at it. So getting out the vote or getting a candidate's name out there, this is a way of doing that. It's very easy. All you do, when we have postcards available, which we don't right this second, but we will very soon, you pick up a packet of postcards from Becky and Pat's house, and I'll give you the exact directions when that time comes. You write the script, which we get from the campaign. Sometimes you might have to address it. In the cases that are coming right now, I think we will have address labels on them. You put on a stamp, put it in the mailbox. That's it. So you can do it on your own schedule. You can do it at midnight if you want. Like Jane said, with your coffee, your tea, your glass of wine. Not one glass of wine is probably enough, because messy is okay, but illegible is not good. The reason I like postcarding is that I'm that introvert that, you know, I could not stand to knock on a stranger's door. I mean, I just can't do it. I hate talking on the phone. You know, I just don't want to do those things. But this works for me. And you know, I mean, we all seek out the thing that we can enjoy doing and it's going to make a difference. And for me, it's postcarding. So if you're not already on my email list, if you're not getting my emails, put your name in the chat. And as I said, we don't have any postcard campaigns going right now, but I think we will have Kelly Kaufman cards by the end of next week. And as soon as they are out there for pickup, you know, I'll let everybody know. And I think we're gonna have a lot of postcards for Kelly Kaufman. And then there will be more Jasmine cards coming at some point pretty soon. So it's gonna be a lot of postcards to write and it's fun. You know, and you can decorate them and use different colors of ink and put stickers on them and get very creative.
Beautiful. Thank you, Kate. And Sandra Menes is just mentioning the approach, the wonderful approach of getting 60 of them and dividing them among your friends in groups of 10. So lovely idea. And huge gratitude to Kate for being such a masterful lead in this. And if you are not already getting her emails from Kate about when postcards are, you get the first notice of when they're ready to go. Please put your name in the chat with postcarding. Okay, thank you, Kate. And PJ, would you say something about the Voter Education Senior Citizen Project?
Yes, ma'am, be glad to. The Senior Citizens Voter Project, Education Project, is the baby of Pam Woodley. Last month, she made a call, or the month before, she made a call and she asked that if anyone was interested in doing this work to put your name in the chat, and I did. So as a result of that, we visit senior citizen centers with a high concentration in the lower income areas. We provide many workshops on voter education with the particular focus on the changes to the Georgia Voting Rights Bill, that 202. We play a Jeopardy game that's designed by Pam to reinforce the information, well, the PowerPoint too, reinforce the information that's been given them when given them through the presentation, and it fosters participation, and they love it. They love it. We've done two. We did Brannon Towers and Decatur Christian Towers in DeKalb, and they both went very well. We helped them with registering to vote, updating the voter registration information, change of address, name changes, and getting to the polls. We bring laptops and forms to the facility to assist them. So if the voting really is the heart and soul of our democracy. So the right to vote, in my mind, is one of the most important volunteer efforts that one can be a part of in today's time. So if there's anyone out there, if you're interested in getting involved with Necessary Trouble Senior Citizens Project, please put your name and contact information in the chat and we'll get back to you. Like I said, that's how I got involved.
Beautiful, beautiful, PJ. Thank you so much. And this actually sounds like both an incredibly useful and also really fun effort based on how PJ and Pam have described it. And they are both very fun too. So I would say that, yes, great.
Yeah, there was fun for all.
So Jane Crane, are you signing up for that effort? If you would just clarify, yes, that's a yes. Would you just put a little senior citizen project next to it? Yes, okay, good, wonderful. Thank you, Jane. Okay, Mary Lou, would you talk about voter registration?
You bet. You know, we don't have to guess the number of jelly beans in a jar anymore in order to vote. But there still have been a lot of obstacles put in the way of registering to vote. And there's still some real challenges, and we feel that it's pretty desperately important that we put some effort out to change things. As you may know, there was a glitch in the motor voter registration for the first half of this year. And so instead of defaulting to registering to vote, it defaulted not to register to vote. And the number of registering voters went significantly down because they didn't register to vote when they either got a new license in a new state or came of age and got their driver's license. So there's that deficit to make up. There are also challenges in terms of how the new form is filled out and how things are more difficult. And it's very, very important that we reach out to people so we find the people that were missed and find the people that need to register to vote. On the other hand, doing this voter registration is just a joy, because you have these little treasure moments, like somebody who is a first-time voter and is so excited. Even at 17 and a half, they can't vote for another 6 months, but they're so excited to be on the list. Or about the former felon who finds out that they are off paper and they can finally go vote again and exercise his right of a citizen. It is also, of course, a really interesting chance to put yourself in new places and meet people that you wouldn't have met otherwise, in getting out to schools and senior citizen and events and festivals and wherever else our incredibly capable and competent fearless leader Janet Grant sends us. So that's another wonderful aspect of doing this. It is and it is a chance to a chance to grow community when you work with people side by side doing the kinds of work that we do at Necessary Trouble. It is a wonderful opportunity to make friends, bond friendships, and meet new folks. So I just think there are so many reasons that to do this, and we need you. Very important information. The deadline for voter registration is October 11th. That's exactly 1 month from today. So we have these 30 days has September, 30 days to get as many people as we possibly can get registered to vote, so that we can get those extra 300 people it may take to flip a district. So please, folks, come join us. Put your name in the chat and voter registration and join up.
Beautiful. Mary Lou, thank you so much, and huge gratitude for Mary Lou and the other volunteers, and also again for Janet Grant for heading up this effort in coordination between Necessary Trouble and the DeKalb Dems. Huge gratitude for how organized she's been about all of it. And because we were trying to have people in the volunteering category, we asked Mary Lou to talk about that, and we are now asking Janet Grant to talk about poll working. Janet, would you say a little bit about being a poll worker?
I will, Becky, and I am going to share just a couple of slides because there are a couple of things that I wanted to make sure that I said. So hang on. And we do have a whole team that aren't at this meeting because they're at Plaza Fiesta for the big Mexican Independence Festival today. And the rumor is that Stacy was there this afternoon. So wow. I said, anyone got extra credit if they got a picture of her at our booth. So we'll see. I'm headed there right after we finish here. So I moved, as many of you know, I moved to Georgia right before the pandemic, and I experienced my first election with that primary in June of 2020. That was a meltdown, and I thought, you know, I could be a poll worker. My mom was a poll worker, as long as I can remember. So I signed up with DeKalb, and they called me like literally a couple days before the August runoff that we had. We have a lot of elections here in Georgia. And they asked if I'd be a poll manager, and I naively said yes, not knowing what a poll manager really all did. But there's lots of opportunities to be poll workers, and you're hearing about the shortages that we have across really all the counties in Georgia because of the pandemic, because there were a lot of older poll workers that chose not to continue because of some of the election challenges and concerns that folks have. But poll working really is a neat activity for us to consider, and I want you to consider it. It is a way to serve your community. It's a way to really directly contribute to free and fair elections. I can tell you that I could, dispute so many of the misinformation because I know now the checks and balances that there are in the system. So we can really support democracy by being actively involved in the process. As you've heard with some of the other activities, it's a chance to work with your neighbors. I literally recruited most of my team are my neighbors and my friends, and it's a fun day, even though it's a long day. And you also get a chance to meet new people, have fun. And there is actually a payment. Many of us take that payment and turn it around to donate to other good causes, but there is, and in fact, in DeKalb, they recently increased it so that at least the base is at least a minimum wage of $15 an hour. So there is a chance to earn a little bit. So the requirements are not too cumbersome. You have to be a U.S. citizen, age 16. You do have to sign up in your own county, or if you, this is the one good thing that came out of Senate Bill 202, is that you can sign up in a contiguous county. So if you lived in DeKalb, you could sign up in Fulton, for instance. You do have to have permission from your home county that they really don't need you to do that. I don't think that's a big burden. You do have to speak, write, and read English. Can't be have a conflict of interest in terms of being a candidate. And then there is a training. And in fact, we just got word, poll managers were just informed yesterday that the training for DeKalb, for instance, will start the week of the 19th. So this is a very quick piece to get involved here. And unfortunately, I wish I could tell you that it's a really easy process to sign up. Definitely, you do need to look at your own county. So, and that is going to be a little bit different in each county. There is a generic portal through the Secretary of State. They then just send it on to the county. And there are a couple of voting rights organizations that have started a process to try and help smooth out this process. So I'm going to put these links in the chat. League of Women Voters through Pro Georgia has a program where you can sign up. They do kind of a little mini introduction with you and then help you facilitate getting signed up with the county. And ACLU is doing something similar. They're also having kind of an ongoing process to work with poll workers. So the way that I would suggest is if you know a poll manager, ask them. I'm recruiting all the time for my poll, and I know others that are part of Necessary Trouble are doing the same thing. So we can help facilitate that as well. So I will put this in the chat and hopefully see some of you on election day. Beautiful.
Janet, thank you so much. And Steve Weisbrod, thank you so much. Steve is interested in being a poll worker. Janet, can you connect with Steve? He put his email in there. That would be great. Beautiful. And if there is anybody else who is willing to do to be a poll worker, if you would also put your name in the chat, and Janet can make sure you find your way to where you need to be. And it's what makes it all possible. Pam Washay, would you talk about being a poll watcher or poll observer? And you're muted, Pam.
Yes, I think the official language with the Democratic Party is poll observer. as the PO and everything there, but it's about watching. And I love, by the way, Michael Beach, thank you for all the thing about canvassing and everything there, because that is my love in terms of volunteering. But in addition to getting people out to vote, we want to make sure that their votes count and that they do have access to it. So poll watching, poll observing is where in fact you are registered by the Democratic Party. There are poll observers for either party. I frankly, in my poll watching, have only run across a Republican poll watcher one time. And that was actually quite a nice experience and such. But basically you are registered and you go through training and such. And then you show up on voting day. So November the 8th, but also poll watching in early voting. So early voting starts on October the 17th. So it's only a little over a month away from now. And so now, and I think that I gave a link to courtesy of Karen Davenport, thank you very much here, a link to Mary Lou, who's going to post it in the chat, of how in fact you can sign up to be a poll watcher. And you will see there that there is a commitment. You have to make a pretty firm commitment, but you have lots of flexibility. You can sort of say, all right, I want to poll watch only on early voting, or I want to poll watch only on election day, or a little bit of both. And you can put down your preference in terms of which days. You can indicate how near or far you are willing to go. They are trying to get poll watchers across. They're trying to cover all of the precincts and such there. So if in fact you're willing to go a little further out from your neighborhood and everything, that's very much appreciated, I think, by the Democratic Party. You can partner sometimes. I mean, usually you can make arrangements with the Democratic Party that there's someone else who's going to sign up that you want to be linked with. And so either you can work on the same day and one can be an inside poll watcher and another one an outside poll watcher. And that works really well because as you see things inside, you can kind of relay that to your person outside, catch that provisional voter who's just left the precinct and everything, and you need to get their data. Or you can split a day and do a partial day because just as with Janet, with poll working and everything, it's a pretty long day because you're there from the moment the polls open to the end of the day. I think this is really important because I think it's really important that it can be boring. I'm not going to lie to you about that there. It can be, it's a long day and you might be in one of those precincts where everything's running great and smoothly and everything. But if you're in one of those precincts where the lines are just getting horrendous or there are glitches in the systems and such, and you report those back to the party and everything, and they then have the resources to go ahead and try to fix those things, you have allowed people to vote who might otherwise have turned away from that precinct because they simply are working 3 jobs and they don't have more time to kind of come in there. The other big thing is provisional voters, and I mentioned that, and that will end up being another volunteer opportunity later on, but provisional voters who come in and they do a provisional ballot, but it must be, as they say, cured in order for it to count in the final data and such there. And you need to get the information from those folks so that other volunteers actually can call them, go see them if necessary, give them the information that they need to make sure that they indeed do cure that ballot and that their vote counts. So that's kind of why I love doing this. And it gives you real insight into the whole process and such there too. This is a lot and a little bit of information. If you go follow that link, you'll get more information. And if anybody really is interested, well, really, anybody's mildly interested in knowing more about this, put your name in the chat and even just say, call me, and I would be happy to connect with you and talk more about it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Pam. There is a link to volunteer in the chat, and take Pam up on her offer of contact if need be. And Robin Shahar is also just made a comment about how important it was when she did it in 2018. Really, really crucial work. We have 2 more volunteer pitches. Ted Brothers, would you talk about being a county survey captain and what that means and how people can do it?
Sure. Be glad to. I did this work in 2020, and what you do is you're a volunteer with the voter protection unit of the Democratic Party of Georgia, and the job is called a county captain. And what you do is you work with the local county Democratic chair people, other locals to fill volunteer jobs in local elections. And if you're not familiar with this, in the elections, we have to have volunteers to do the jobs of ballot process monitoring. Those are the people who come in and watch the processing of absentee ballots to make sure that it's done according to state law and that it's done fairly. There are vote review panelists, which are local panelists who adjudicate the intent of a voter when a ballot isn't clear enough to scan correctly. And then this year, they've added a 3rd volunteer job, which is ballot duplication panelists. And those are the people who will actually duplicate the ballots that for some reason have been torn or destroyed and can't run through the scanner. So all 3 are things that the party has to have people involved in. So the 5 responsibilities for this job are, briefly, you identify and track the county specific plans. You work with the local people to make sure that they have people there. You help them, number 2, to recruit. They all have to be appointed by the state party or by the local party, and you help the local folks with that. The DPG will offer training for all these positions, and our job is to make sure that these people get trained, that they're aware of training. And then also these people who are the volunteers do reporting back to the county about what they see and hear out in the field. So it's all very important work. I totally enjoyed this work 2 years ago, and I'm excited to be doing it again. It does, as the election gets closer, but right now it's not taking a lot of time, but it will start getting more intense, probably about 20 hours a week in the month before the election. Last time I was assigned 8 counties of varying sizes to work with, but I also had a deputy to assist me as well. I'm fortunate this time that I have the same deputy. The work is all remote by telephone and email. We have a need for more volunteers for this job for this election, both as county and deputy. This is very important because the Republicans we know are going to have volunteers present for every possible process. And when you see a trained volunteer on a voter review panel disputing when a Republican is saying, well, I think a vote for Mike Pence should count as a vote for Donald Trump, whatever the argument it is, and our person can counter it and come back with the law and why that shouldn't count. It's very important that we have Democrats here for all these positions. So if it's something you'd be interested in doing, you can contact me. If you know Julie Edelson, she's actually running this program and I'm working for her on this. And I will put her email in the chat box, but it's a lot of fun. I made some great friends through this, local friends. I still have a network of friends that I talk to in various counties and get updates about what was happening. You know, some of these people you talk to a couple of times a week. So it was a good way to get to know people in the state and do some good work. So I hope some of you will join me.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Ted. And so there is Judy Edelson's Gmail address. And if you're planning to do this, just so we know, if you would also just put your name in the chat with county captain in it, that would be fantastic. Actually, let me do the next one, and then we'll answer your question, Michael. So last one, voter protection hotline. Deborah Hill is going to talk to us about being on the voter protection hotline, and just a shout out to Deborah Hill for having been on the voter protection hotline starting in 2018. So she's been there for a minute, and much gratitude. Deborah, tell us about being on the hotline.
Hi, can everybody hear me? Okay, good. Yeah, I am ever so grateful to this group for introducing me to the hotline, because I just love working on the hotline. I think it's the most exciting thing in the world. And as we've all been saying, I think this whole meeting is always about, voting is where it's at. That's how you win elections, getting those votes counted. And the voter protection hotline is, it's a Democratic Party of Georgia voter protection hotline. And it was started here in 2018. And Becky was there with me. I remember when we were all in one room together. And of course, after COVID, we all went remote. And, at first I thought, oh, this is going to be terrible. I'm going to miss everybody. But it is so much fun working remotely, because we work on a call center. We work with the message center. We're in constant contact. You don't have to raise your hand and wait for somebody to see you. If you have a question, you just write that little question into your message center and your captain will answer it. But to back up a little bit, basically what we do is we help voters vote just like everybody else here, but they call us. We sign up for shifts. We're given resources, we're given training. And by the way, the person that does the training is the manager and her assistant. And they are just the nicest, sweetest people. Rafaela is the manager this year. And there's nothing you can't approach her with. I mean, if you make a mistake, if you are not sure of something, everyone is just there to help. And basically, we provide helpful and accurate information to the voters, who are always incredibly grateful. They could be calling us about voter registration. They could be calling us about just anything. Can my son vote from college? And then when we get into election mode, which is 6 weeks before the election, it gets extremely exciting. And I find it fun because I feel like I'm in the room where it happens. That's what I feel like. I just think it's very exciting. We track incidents in which people are restricted from voting or registering so that staff can take steps to remedy this. As you know, they don't make it easy in Georgia to vote. And did I mention that this hotline is the busiest in the country? We get more calls than any other hotline. No surprises there. We track the calls coming in so we know what kind of issues there are. This helps. It's a very easy way of doing it too, because they have forms for us just to fill out. You can just check boxes and put numbers in. Let's see. I think on my best days, I've always had an interest in law, and you really do learn a lot. You really very quickly, you learn the ins and outs of voting. And just like when you do registration and some of these other things that were just talked about. But I never leave a shift without knowing I've really helped somebody, or I've really helped get a vote counted. And I wish I could tell you some stories, but we're not really allowed to tell stories, because we've had some pretty exciting stories where if it wasn't for this hotline, many votes would not have been counted. And right now we're scaling our process so that we can have more and more people on the hotline, so that when we do get when we are at our busiest, we never have to call somebody back. That's what our hope is. Our hope is that on election day this year, we can take every single call without anyone having to hang up or leave a message. That would just be tremendous, because some people don't call back. Some people don't leave a message. But when they do, when they get their answers and they realize that we're there for them, I can't tell you how good it feels, to help somebody who maybe has a neurological disorder and doesn't know what to do, and they can't sign their absentee ballot, or it gets sent back to them, or they have elderly parents, or they've been waiting in line for gosh knows how long. But we're there, and it feels like we're on the front lines. I kind of feel like we're all on the front lines here, which is so exciting. But I'm happy to answer any questions, and I've given Mary Lou a link, I think, or I've given somebody a link, maybe Pat. If you're interested in joining, or you want to ask more questions, you want to ask our manager, Rafaela, She's happy to answer questions. If you want to give me your email, I'm happy to message you and answer any questions. I will say I am leaving next week to go out of town on Wednesday night. So I'd prefer to answer any and all questions before then, if possible. So let's see, did I have anything else to say? I don't know. I think that's about it. But again, just if you're interested, just leave your email and I'll be glad to get in touch with you.
Beautiful. Deborah, thank you so very much. So if you are interested and are not already involved in the hotline, if you would put your name and email address in the chat, and Deborah or somebody will follow up with you, and it is crucial, crucial, crucial work. Pat, Michael Beach had asked about texting. Do you want to just say a little bit?
What we've been told is that both of Kelly and Jasmine will have texting, but will come much closer to the election. They're not going to do it early. And as soon as we hear what's happening, I'll put out a call for texters. If you're interested in texting, just put your name, email, and texting in the chat, and I'll be sure to get in touch with you. Basically, what we do is that they give us a setup, and you send a bunch of text messages, and then you wait to see if there are any replies, and the replies are where the business really matters to the people who are asking you questions about the election. So we'll have texting, but it won't be for a while.
And just two other notes. Actually, and they're both about our next meeting. At our October meeting, one of the things that we will be doing is there will be some additional ways to volunteer that aren't appropriate to sign up for yet, but that we'll be recruiting for then. So for instance, Robin had raised a question about provisional ballot curing. There'll be another set of volunteer opportunities like texting too, and we will float those at the next meeting. And Robin also reminded me, and I am just so sorry about the timing of this, that our October 9th meeting falls right on the day of the Pride March. And the Pride March will be at least earlier in the day, and our meeting along with the fundraiser will be won't be starting till 4. So hopefully people will be able to attend whatever events that they want to that day and still make it to the meeting. And before passing this back to PJ for kind of final wrap up, we have, and also yard signs. Thanks to Lou Boos, we will have starting today, tomorrow, the next few days, we will have yard signs for Be Win at Pat and outside Pat and my house, so people can come by and get them. And we will also have about 10 signs for Nekima. And so if you are in District 5 and would like a yard sign for Nekima, they will also be outside our house. So yard signs for Nekima and yard signs for B will be outside our house downstairs, and we will send the email, the direction out to anybody who doesn't know where we live. And on that note, we are, before passing it back to PJ for a final wrap up, we're going to turn this over to Michelle Truxillo for a little closing gift. And Michelle, you're muted.
Thank you. The song I want to sing tonight comes from a poem written in 1911 by a poet named James Oppenheim. There was a huge textile strike in Massachusetts in 1911. And the story goes that one of the women marching had a sign that said, "Bread and roses." And Oppenheim was inspired by this whole idea and wrote this poem, which is what the song is about. It was finally put to music, interestingly enough, in 1976 by Mimi Farina, the sister of Joan Baez. And supposedly the philosopher Galen was the one who said, if you have 2 loaves of bread, sell one and buy flowers with the money you have. So and as we go marching, marching, excuse me, in the beauty of the day, a million darkened kitchens, 1,000 mill lofts gray, are touched with all the radiance that a sudden sun discloses. For the people hear us singing, bread and roses, bread and roses. As we go marching, marching, unnumbered women dead go crying through our singing their ancient call for bread. Small art and love and beauty, their drudging spirits knew. For yes, it's bread we fight for, but we fight for roses too. As we go marching, marching, we bring the greater days for the rising of the women, me a ring of us all. No more the drudge and idler, 10 that toil where one reposes, but the sharing of life's glories, bread and roses, bread and roses. Hearts starve as well as bodies. Give us bread, but give us roses too.
All right.
Beautiful. Michelle, thank you so very much. And PJ, it's all yours.
Thank you, Becky. Thank you, Michelle. That was beautiful. Now I just want to tell us about the slide. Do we have the slide for the
Just
2
bringing it.
dates? Okay. Okay. Our next meeting, Bees Fund, I'm sorry, the Bees fundraising is on October the 2nd, and our Troublers next meeting is October the 9th, which for the first hour will be fundraising for Kelly and Jasmine. So Troublers, as you go out, I think we had a wonderful meeting today. I thank everybody for coming and for sticking with us. And as we go out for this next month, let us stand fast and be immovable in our necessary trouble.